How's it going, everybody? In this video, we're going to transition from layer 2 in the CCNP course over to the layer 3 section. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the different things that we're going to dive into in the layer 3 section and dive into those details. So, in the reality of it, there's about this much layer 2 and about this much layer 3. We can't even fit it inside the webcam space because the fact of there is just so much more to do routing than there is switching. Now, because we know those particular variables are in play, we're going to take advantage of them as we're moving forward. We're going to take a look at a lot of different capabilities when it comes to routing. We're going to focus on all the IGPs, so RIP, EIGRP, OSPF. We won't be doing ISIS because, well, we might. I really haven't made the decision, but it'll be very similar to how we deploy OSPF. We'll deploy OSPF in the different areas. The main goal for the topology, as you see in front of you, is to focus on layer 3 operations. So we will be taking a look at a number of different capabilities and options as we're moving forward. So let me go ahead and get out of the way, and we're going to do some whiteboarding here so you understand what's going to be going on where. So we'll start off with what they call protocol independent routing, or PIR, which this is going to include things like static routing. Actually, let me go ahead and clear the screen and scoot down to the bottom. Come down here so I have more room to work with. So we'll start off with protocol independent routing. So this will be including your static routing, IPv4, IPv6. We're also going to include things like policy-based routing and some other variations that come into play with that, which will also include things like object tracking and the object tracking and /IP SLAs. We'll take a look at exactly how that comes into play with those details and how you can deal with those deal with that when it comes into play. Once we get this piece knocked out, then we can start transitioning into more of the in-depth stuff. So we'll start off with RIP, right? We'll be focusing mainly on RIP version 2, as well as RIP next generation, where it's applicable. If we can get it up and running, we will. If not, no big deal. That'll be basically where we start. We'll do that. We'll focus on like an overview of how RIP works. Then we'll talk about getting it up and running. So operations, we'll get that working, or ops, and then we'll look at authentication. And once we get finished focusing on that, we'll dive into some of the more advanced features. That's pretty much it for RIP. We're going to keep it pretty basic with RIP because not a very large portion of it's actually not on a blueprint at all, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because I'd rather talk about it and you not need it than not talk about it and then you need it in production. This is mainly for those of you that may need to use it in production on non-Cisco gear, or I've been in environments where I'm dealing with like prosumer grade equipment. So a couple $100 non-Cisco device, like a Netgear or a D-Link, or pick your vendor out there, honestly, that is running RIP but doesn't support EIGRP, OSPF, or ISIS. So in situations like that, knowing some basic RIP will definitely aid you in that particular case. Then we're going to switch gears over to EIGRP. We're going to focus again on an overview. We'll then focus on operations, so ops. We'll get it, which will include getting it up and running. We'll take a look at authentication. Then we'll dive into summarization. And then once we have those pieces done, we'll take a look at some of its advanced features with stubs and any miscellaneous features and capabilities. Is there a lot to cover with EIGRP? There is, but not just in the normal protocol operations. Then we'll dive into OSPF. Same thing here, overview. Then we'll take a look at the ops. Also, we'll put it as tier auth. We'll also take a look at summarization. Summary. We'll take a look at areas. We'll take a look at different device types. So stub versus non-stub. Areas which will include stubs. We'll take a look at we'll take a look at areas. We'll take a look at stubs. We'll take a look at the link state database. So an LSDB breakdown. So you guys understand it in more detail. And that's pretty much the majority of what I'm going to cover with OSPF. So if there's other things that we're going to add in there, I'll add them in as we get deeper into it. I will actually go back and review my notes, and there might be some things that I add in as we go along because it might be useful to us down the road. Then we're going to jump into BGP. So this will be Internet Enabled BGP, right? We'll come in here, Overview. We'll take a look at the ops. We'll take a look at auth. We'll take a look at, in this case here, it's called aggregation. Then we'll also take a look at traffic engineering. We'll take a look. Traffic engineering is going to be a big topic area because we're going to be diving into it in a lot of details. So this is going to be how BGP is able to manipulate where traffic is going, how it gets there, that type of stuff. We'll also take a look at confederations. We'll also take a look at its scalability. So what are some of the different areas that you can deal with? There's confederations. We'll take a look at communities. There's a lot of things that we'll be taking a look at in BGP that will take some time. BGP is going to be a long section. Once we get done with this, and this is going to be just normal routed IPv4, IPv6. Then we're going to transition over into MPLS. We get that up and running and deployed. This is, again, overview. We'll look at the ops. So we'll look at getting connectivity up and running. So what do we need to do with IGP? Then we'll talk about VRFs. We'll take a look at doing layer 3 VPN and how it comes into play and doing different capabilities with that. We'll take a look at a bunch of different PE to CE routing that comes into play with that. There'll be a lot of details we go into those, a lot of detail that will go into that particular area. Then we're going to switch over into IPsec VPN, so tunnel-based VPNs. So I am going to do a quick crypto map-based VPN. So actually, let me just put in here. We'll then dive into IPsec VPN. We'll start off with crypto map-based VPNs just to show you what that looks like in case you've never seen it before. And then we're going to dive into the tunnel-based. So this is technically called policy right here because you're going to have a policy that's going to match on the traffic. And then tunnel-based will kick in and we'll spend the majority of our time there. We'll start off with the GRE over IPsec. Then we'll dive into SVTI. Then we'll dive into DMVPN. Then we'll also take a look at Flex VPN. It's not on the blueprint for CCNP, but it is something that's on the CCIE blueprint. So we'll talk about it as well. The only major difference between these two is one is doing IKE version 1. This guy is doing IKE version 2. So that'll be the big differentiator between those two. Then we're going to go and take a look at multicast. We'll take a look at multicast. So again, the overview, the ops. We'll mainly be looking at sparse mode. We'll take a look at doing rendezvous points or RPs. We'll take a look at doing auto RP. Actually, RPs will be included in that. We'll also look at RP, auto RP, and BSR. Then we're going to look at diving into MSDP. So if you've got multicast that's spread amongst a couple of different BGP autonomous system numbers, we'll take a look at how that comes into play as well. Then we're going to go into, that'll pretty much be the bulk of the series, and then we're going to focus on services. So this will be, services will include things that are running on the network. These are going to be routed protocols. So DHCP, DNS, NTP, you know, control plane policing. So we'll say services and security. Security. This will be control plane policing and protection. We'll take a look at SSH and a bunch of other capabilities and features that go into that zone-based firewall. We'll take a look at a lot of that type of stuff. So there's going to be a lot of details that we dive into in this particular set of videos, and I'm going to approach them in the order that I've laid them out. So it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I won't break them down into individual modules, but I will give you the video title will help you understand. It's like, okay, now we're going to start talking about, static routing, and the flow will go that direction. So as the videos are released, you'll understand what's going on where and that type of stuff. If there is a particular topic that you would like me to cover and dive into in more detail, or maybe you watched the video and you didn't get enough information out of it, or you want me to do a little bit of a deeper dive, absolutely let me know, and I'll be happy to dive into those particular areas. But this is a very involved set of videos that we're going to be diving into and getting operational. It's going to be only working config. So as I'm recording something, if something goes awry, you'll never see the light of day of that video. It'll be an operational deployment when I get it up and running. The one thing that I do want to mention is if the topology might change slightly from video to video. And the reason why I'm saying that now is because I might be demoing something that I need to dive into where I need to modify the topology just ever so slightly in order to actually affect that. So like, for example, in the Ether channels video, I added additional links between the switches so you guys could see how that would work. So things like that do come into play. It is what it is. So this is going to be for the most part, the breakdown that we're going to be walking through. There's a lot of stuff to cover and a lot of details to go into. So it's going to be a lot. I'm actually really looking forward to this because it's going to give me the opportunity to play around with it. Oh, I forgot a couple of details. So we're also going to be taking a look at SD-WAN. So we'll take a look at the overview, like we've been saying, ops. We'll also be taking a look at doing the controller deployment, the vEdge deployment, and then doing some basic routing between the vEdge devices. So it'll be a basic deployment. Very similar to the SD-WAN series that was already released. So if you want a deeper dive into SD-WAN, I'm going to be incorporating that as we go forward, and that's going to be one of the things that we add in. I'm also going to be adding in some ASA firewalls. So ASA is going to be added in so that you guys can get a taste of what ASA firewalls look like. We'll be taking a look at a single ASA, so at like a branch office location or at a sales office. Then we're going to deploy out 2 ASAs to do active, standby, high availability at a branch office. Then the third option is going to be where we take a look at multiple context mode as well as clustering. So we'll take a look at some of those different options that go along with that. And then we're also going to deploy, and I'm kind of running out of room here, we'll also deploy FTD, so Firepower Threat Defense, in a very simple solution. These won't be deep dives by any stretch of the imagination. It'll just be like, okay, this is kind of a high-level breakdown of the particular topic, and then a pretty rudimentary deployment. It'll be, when we go into the security set of videos that'll be coming out soon, that we'll be taking a look at those details as we move forward. So I'm actually really looking forward to this series, because once we go ahead and I'll go ahead and clear my if I scroll up, the overlay goes with it. But this is the flow that we're going to go through. So technically this will be SD-WAN will be 8, and then the firewalls will be 9. So 10 for SD-WAN and 11 for ASA and the firewalls. So let me go ahead and clear all that off. So as we can see up here, eventually I will be adding a connection between iOS 7 and iOS 8 to do the RIP for authentication and doing any IPv6 related stuff that I need to do, because that's going to be necessary in order to pull that off. You'll see that over here in EIGRP, we're doing EIGRP internally in here for the IGP and public IP address ranges. We're also doing the same thing with OSPF. So I'll be deploying OSPF here and talking about how that comes into play. If I decide to pull the trigger on IS to IS, IS will get deployed here as well in terms of getting it up and running. I'm not going to be doing or focusing a ton on IGP internally. We will be doing that, but right now the goal isn't necessarily to highlight IGPs in the LAN, because any one of these locations, when you're in the infrastructure exam, I'm kind of modeling this somewhat like the V5 exam that I sat through to a very minor degree. So I'm not going to go into a ton of details to what I saw in the V5 exam, but what I will tell you is that regardless of whether it's an enterprise, if it's a customer location that you're working on, or it's a service provider that you're setting up, you should not have to, it should be no different when you're deploying, because that's basically what we're going to be trying to emulate. We're going to be doing a lot of service provider, but also a lot of internal routing as well. But we're going to be focusing on the internal routing as more of a service provider focus, because I'm trying to bridge the gap in the SP world. But at the end of the day, whether you deploy it in a mock SP or in a real world enterprise makes no difference, right? So we're going to be taking a look at how that comes into play and demoing the technologies and things like that as we move forward. Now, some of the locations, when we dive into some of the more advanced configs like IPsec VPN and stuff like that, router 5 will be a spoke for both. So will iOS 45 and iOS 48 will both be spokes. So we're going to keep the deployment relatively simple. 2 spokes, and we'll be able to do whatever communication we need to do with that. So pretty cool stuff in terms of the overall operations. So as it sits right now, I am sitting at about 50% CPU. If I turn on any of the controllers for SD-WAN, that's going to peg that. So things will remain off until I need to actually bring them online. So for example, if you notice over here on the left hand side, I've got a couple of iOS XR routers that are terminating a connection over here. That's turned off because it's a waste of resources right now just to have it on. I've got what I've got turned on now, so that I'm going to be burning through these videos pretty quickly, because it's a lot of stuff that I'm already familiar with. But I've been toying with the idea of doing an NP course, or I shouldn't say a course, an NP set of videos. So this is pretty much my kickoff to that. So we'll be diving into those details as we go along. But eventually these routers will be turned on to, for those of you out there that work in the SP world or have ASR 9000s deployed, or NCS devices that run iOS XR as well. This is going to help you understand how to deploy the solution effectively and things like that. So I've got a sprinkling of XR in a number of different places so that we can test XR out. So this will also cover the service provider world as well. I'm not going to really dub it service provider unless I'm actually working on OSPF or BGP, because you're not really going to see EIGRP in a service provider world. But at any rate, that's basically where this comes into play. So yeah, that's basically where I'm coming from with all this stuff. So I'm actually looking forward to it and diving into the details and how it's all going to work. But at the end of the day, we'll see how it plays out. So right now, we're going to kick off again with protocol independent routing. I'm going to dive into those details. I'm actually probably going to throw in a little bit of some basic subnetting in there as well, just as a quick refresher for some things and stuff like that. But as you can see, the topology is pretty big. There's a lot of things going on. So this will be available before I start pushing out videos, because I'm going to be releasing things in waves. So the layer 2 stuff will get released obviously before this video does, and then at some point I will have to power everything down, export the topology file, and let you guys import it. every image that's in here except for the ASA images that are right here, ASA 32, ASA 33. Those are the FTD device and all of the Viptela SD-WAN device or images all come from Viral. So CML2, that's basically where I'm getting all that from. So I just pay for the access. I happen to be fortunate to I've got access to the images for everything else. So that's that. If you guys have any questions for me, please leave a comment in the comment section below. If you'd like to see something that I haven't already planned on doing, again, comment down below and I will do my best to try to accommodate that request. Until next time, guys, take it easy. Thanks for stopping by. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch all of you in the next video.